Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday Roast. Great to have you all back again. And we're here again with an old friend of the show and a new one. Jemma, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? People will know you from the Jeremy Vine show, but what other things are you up to?
Oh, I do a bit of BBC papers occasionally, a bit of Sky News papers occasionally. I do. I'm working with Byline Media quite a lot now, which is really great, and the Talk TV as well. So yeah, basically, I'm a kind of political pundit, gob on a stick, but I'm a writer as well. And my background is actually, I was a TV presenter back in the day. So this has just happened, all this politics business. I got radicalised around Brexit. I ended up having a big argument with Anne Widdecombe, and that was it.
Because I've seen you, face off with some of these people before. How do you keep your cool with somebody like Anne Widdecombe?
Mike Parry, I think.
Yes, Mike Parry, yes.
Yeah. He's a right old foghorn. The thing is that I think people forget, so they see you pitted against these people, you've got completely opposing views. There's only one person that I wouldn't ever work with ever again, because I just, as a human, actually, what happens in reality, it's a bit like social media. Everyone just says whatever they think. When you meet people in person, we're all polite, right? You don't go up to people and go, I hate your views. You're chatting in the makeup room, and then you go on air and you think, God, I can't believe you think that. Like, how can you believe that? And so I'm sort of completely authentic on TV. Like, I only ever say what I really believe, but I'm also quite polite. I'm not being nasty to these people backstage unless they're offensive to me personally, which they're not really. So it is interesting. And I do a podcast with a girl called Marina Purkis, who's absolutely on the same, we're just like literally political spirit twins. We really, really are. We agree on everything. We're our own little mini echo chamber. But when she started, she was like, Gemma, I don't understand. Like, she would name X, Y, or Z, these real right wingers. And she was like, but they were quite nice. And I'm like, I know, you're not kind of up against Jabba the Hutt. They're all, so you just kind of learn to separate it, really. And it's a good lesson, because I'm not, apart from Tory MPs, I'm not really nasty to anybody online. Like, everybody has their own views, and that's that.
That's great. Okay. Jenny, can you tell us about yourself?
I'm Jenny. I run rsh.scot, Random Scottish History. We've got loads of videos out on YouTube. We've done a true crime podcast series. We've published books. I obviously do stuff with yourself and Indie Live. I do Indie Live mini documentary, hour-long documentaries on the last Friday of every month, just on the topic of my choice. So that can get pretty random. And Jemma saying she got radicalised around Brexit. It was the first Scottish referendum that got me. Up until that point, I was a no-voting Tory, brought up that way by my parents and the Daily Express. Yeah, the Scottish referendum really just highlighted to me just how little I knew about my own country. And so Random Scottish History was born, because I took to the history books to find out about it. And in time for the referendum, I voted yes. And I'm a staunch believer in Scottish self-determination. So that's where we're at now.
Can you tell us the most interesting fact about Scottish history that people maybe don't know?
I think the one thing that should be highlighted more often than it is the fact that for the last 315 years, Scotland has been the most overtaxed, underfunded, and underrepresented part of the UK. And it's about time that ended. So I just feel like that needs highlighted far more often than it is. I don't know why anyone would vote against liberating ourselves from that kind of a situation.
My name is Max. I run the Robespierre channel, talk about Brexit and British politics in general. Maybe we can jump into, hopefully we can get Alex back. Jemma, what's happening with the Conservative Party at the moment and Liz Truss? What's your take on that? Is it an absolute? Is she going to stay? Is she going to go? There's talk about Rishi Sunak perhaps coming back to unite the party. What's going to happen?
I don't think there's one person in Britain who knows exactly what's going to happen. They are headless chickens. It's a viper's nest at the moment. They're all panicking. You know, they're imploding in on themselves. It's a pretty foul place to be, I'd imagine. I mean, if it wasn't so serious, and if what she and her chancellor had done wasn't so incredibly damaging and destructive and economically nightmarish, it would be hilarious. I mean, imagine like being in a job for 5 minutes and coming in and wiping 500 billion quid off the global markets in a day. And then, like, you know, the Bank of England having to buy back 65 billion in debt. That's the entire education budget for the UK for a year. I mean, that is where it's despicable. It's so negligent. And the fact they didn't get it checked out. I mean, I feel strongly that they should have been dragged out of office within. It's just get them away from the job. But that's, of course, not what's happening. And Tories are just looking at their own little lives and going, oh, well, I'll lose my job if there's an election right now. How can we preserve the party? But by all accounts, they're despairing. And like this hideous 1922 committee that determined everything. I mean, apparently she went and had a meeting with them. There's not even an ounce of me that feels sorry for her. You know, she's brought all of this on herself with her crazed ideology that she's foisted upon us. You know, every single person I know will be impacted by her delusion. You know, like my mortgage is going to go up in July, and, you know, that sucks for me. It will be passed on to renters. You know, pensions will be damaged. And this is where perhaps like the Tory policies have always really impacted the lowest earning people in the country the most. And now it's hitting everybody. So now you see people going, oh, actually. So yeah, I don't think she's going to last very much longer. But I've heard so many different rumours from Sunak and Mordaunt coming back as a duo, or get Boris Johnson back. No thanks. Or Gove. Although I don't know. Then I hear that he's going off to work at the Times. So who knows what they've got planned? But frankly, let's face it, we need an election.
Yes, definitely. Jenny, what's your take on this as well? But the idea of Michael Gove coming back, you have a Scot running Britain once again.
I would swear, but I'd rather not. No, again, England can keep Gove. He is not a Scot, like, by any stretch of the imagination. He is very much embedded himself with the Westminster elite, and they can keep him. Good luck to him, but. Like I've said, I mean, it really just keeps coming across as though the politics coming out of Westminster is so foreign that a lot of people up here, I think, are starting to feel quite objective about the whole thing, even though it does affect us. It's affecting the cost of living, what have you. The Scottish government does so much to mitigate the damage that comes out of Westminster, which in effect actually goes against them to a certain extent, because Scots aren't feeling the full weight of everything detrimental coming out of Westminster because of how much is mitigated. I mean, recently they've just had to put in rent freezes and eviction freezes so that renters can feel a little more secure in their housing. What that does is give unionists in Scotland no idea of how bad things can really get under a Westminster government. They don't understand that if Westminster is allowed to run roughshod over Scotland, if these policies were enacted in full up here, that it would just be devastating. You know, I feel like we're very lucky up here.
You know, it's interesting though, Jenny. I mean, I live not far. I mean, I'm in just outside London, and I'm looking objectively, feeling totally detached from what's going on up the road. There's just like a bunch of lunatics that are living out their psychodramas. You're just like, what are you doing? It's so obvious they don't have the best interests of anybody except themselves at heart. And this awful influence from these think tanks and. To have that level of arrogance, which I don't know whether it comes from Eton or where it comes from, what Kool-Aid they're drinking, but to have these ideas, it's like if I was testing something out and it was going to impact all these people, get it checked first. To have that arrogance, I am right. And then to still be banging on about growth, it's like she's just talking sort of nonsense.
But the fact is that they are being told by financiers worldwide, what you're doing is ridiculous. What you're doing is wrong. They're seeing the stock markets. They're seeing the news that's coming out from like everywhere outside of Britain, saying that Britain is now an uninvestable country. You don't want to put your money into Britain because it's going to go into the hole that the Tories have created.
After crushing the currency by unveiling billions of tax cuts funded by billions more borrowing, Britain's new government made a sharp U-turn on Monday morning, abandoning its plan to abolish the highest rate of income tax of 45%. In the days that followed the announcement of Britain's mini-budget, pension funds have nearly collapsed, and the Bank of England has had to shore up sovereign debt. One of the reasons this budget was so badly received is that Downing Street's newest occupants initially declined to have their figures scrutinised by the usual fiscal watchdog. The scant detail provided only sparked further outrage, and although the government has said that they'll provide more information before the end of November, many fear that with the economy on the brink, there's no time to spare.
Yet they're just set on putting the blinkers on and ignoring all the advice. They're ignoring all of this negativity that's coming out, all of the evidence that's coming out. The very fact that they're still harping on about a trickle-down economics in a sense that it might work. It's been proved so often that it doesn't work. It's absolute... Again, I'm not going to swear.
No, you can swear.
But it is
we're allowed to swear here.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like they're not hiding it anymore, that they are out for big business. They've just come out and said they're going to heavily tax, they're going to put the windfall tax on renewable energy, but not the fossil fuel industries.
I know.
How do you justify that? All that does is tell everybody without a shadow of a doubt, yous are getting paid by the oil and gas industries.
Yeah.
You can't not be. The very fact that you're doing everything to their benefit, that you're allowing them to make record profits while completely obliterating everybody's savings because they're having to pay for these sky-high bills now. Truss keeps saying in Parliament recently, and it's just been repeated so often, she keeps saying, yes, but we've stopped bills from being as much as £6,000. Yeah. So you're stopping that. And the offset is that we've got to pay extra for food, we've got to pay extra for our mortgages, we've got to pay extra for rent, we've got to pay... So we are
also
still having to pay as much.
It's a total fallacy. Every time she says that, I'm screaming because we've got to pay it back.
Exactly.
She hasn't like taken the money off our bills. She has created debt for us because she hasn't taxed the energy giants who are literally going, you can if you want. I mean, it's that blatant. She's just ridiculous. Such an idiot.
They're not hiding it.
There's this sort of whole thing where you got to be quite, obviously language is really, really important. It's something I'm on live TV all the time. So you have these sort of inbuilt filters. And I'm also very careful to not sort of just insult for the sake of it, right? Because Liz Truss can't be stupid. Okay, this is what I'm trying to get at. Because there's different types of intelligence. Okay, you've got social, emotional, intellectual. You've got so many different types. She has got herself into office, into the highest office in the land. Okay, she is prime minister in a party that is, like vipers. They are. So it's hard to say you shouldn't. I struggle with calling her thick, but it's just like, what are you doing, you stupid woman? There is a part of me that's like, but it blows my mind. And I find it, like if she was to walk in here now and I sort of had 15 minutes with her, what would I say? Like, what are you doing?
Questions is to answer questions, maybe. But Ian Blackford had to stand up and go, well, I mean, if
she wants to ask us questions, we can swap places. But,
she doesn't realise that PMQs is for her to actually answer folk,
Yeah, for example, Jemma, you highlighted earlier about the £65 billion that was spent to prop up pension funds and everything. But it's about accountability. So, for example, if somebody's working in a supermarket and they were at the till and they lost 65 quid, they'd receive a talking to by their manager. There would be consequences, but
come off their wages.
Yeah, and you have the Chancellor throw away basically £65 billion, and it's probably more than.
Disgusting. And this is another problem that we face. And I mean, like, I literally was really bad at maths, okay? And the whole concept of a billion is very difficult for people to get their heads around. So when you look at like how much free school dinners would cost and you go, okay, 500 million, and then you think, well, they wasted 65 billion. And I was on Jeremy Vine the other day and I said, I think they should go to prison. And it was one of those moments where, has she said that for the sake of a clip? I stand by that, exactly as you're saying. If I went into work and just said, oh, I'll have that, took a telly or something and stuck it in my bag, like, people would go, oh dear, having a nervous breakdown. But, you know, it's theft, it's stealing. And if they had done their due diligence and got it costed out, like by the OBR, which the only reason they didn't call it a budget was so they could avoid that. Because again, I'm so clever. I'm more clever than every economist under the sun, except for Patrick Minford, who's professionally wrong. And he's the only person they can wheel out to defend all this crap. Then, like, in my mind, they are criminals. Because everybody is like, you know, you've got 800,000 children in poverty. You are responsible for this country. And you've lost all that money that could have gone directly into those pockets of those people. You argue about putting welfare up. You argue about feeding hungry children. And yet you then put money in the pockets of millionaires and freaking well lose all that money. That's fundamentally.
They call it government spending. That's our money that they're spending. It's not their money. They're literally taking our money and then misappropriating it. So it is just theft.
100%. And I don't have particularly sort of like extreme views. And I was questioned about that. I was very, what? And I was like, no, get your heads into gear. It's a bit like royalty, you know, like that construct only works if you think those people are better than you. And this idea that because somebody's suddenly one day there's some idiot, and then the next day, like working for Shell, and then the next the foreign secretary going around doing really shit trade deals, and then their prime minister. It's like, no, no. Like the respect has to be earned. You know, that idea that someone's in office and you should, but they're prime minister. There's some really interesting journalism being done, especially by Byline, I'm going to say, about Tufton Street and about those think tanks. And it's starting to hit the mainstream. There was a fantastic moment on LBC the other day where the political editor of Byline came up against the head of media, who I've been on TV with before, who's from the Institute of Economic Affairs. They refuse to say who they are funded by.
Agenda that organisations like the Institute for Economic Affairs have been pushing for years, including at Conservative Party conference, where they host a lot of events with ministers and where they boast that Liz Truss has been one of their most regular attendees. But people can't look at the IEA and see who funds them.
They can see a breakdown. They can see a breakdown. Some of our donors.
There is no real breakdown on the website.
Say where they're from.
Misleading listeners by suggesting there is. Nobody can go on your website and see who funds your organisation.
You can see where proportionately the spending comes from, the donations come from.
What does that mean, proportionally? What does that mean? Can people go on your website?
Fundamentally, we protect the privacy of our donors.
So they can't?
They can look at the proportion, and also some of our donors do express that openly.
But you have to understand that if you aren't transparent, and what was the saying, transparency is the best form of disinfectant, if you aren't transparent, then of course people are going to think the worst, aren't they?
They have zero transparency. And again, like allegedly it's tobacco, fossil fuels, companies, what else? All the lovely stuff. And so hence like fracking. And we know that Jacob Rees-Mogg has links with his Somerset Capital to fossil fuels. We know that Crispin Odey, a big old bloody hedge fund investor, met with Kwasi Kwarteng and had lunch and then made 300 million quid or something the day that he tanked the pound. I mean, this stuff is all out in the public forum. You have to be really careful what you say because they're all quite litigious individuals, but it's there if you open your eyes. And this brings me back to something that I find really interesting. I was having a discussion with someone the other day about what is the most important trait in a politician if you had to boil it down to one. And I said empathy, and he said integrity. And I would say both are pretty bloody important. But I suppose what it comes down to is motivation. So why is Ed Miliband in politics? Why is Vet Cooper in politics? Why is Jacob Rees-Mogg in politics? Why, and then when you start, why was Boris Johnson in politics? For him, I personally believe it's just glory, just, he doesn't have no real principles at all, just wants the power and the sort of, the attention, and then go and do after dinner circuit. He's bloody lazy.
Whenever anyone asked him what he wanted to be, he would answer world king. That is true.
But yeah, as soon as you get into the realms of, why are you trying to bring back fracking? Yeah. What's that about? Oh, sorry, you're having lunch with who? Oh,
I mean, they are bred that way by their schools too. I mean, I was in private school, and you don't get the trades, so you didn't get home ec, you didn't get woodworking, you did get current affairs in primary 7, though, which is like social studies. You had to know all about the news and keep up with what was happening politically by the age of, I don't know.
Can I bring in something that was said this week about the Conservative Party, or about the Tories? That's a particular individual said that she detested the Tories. That was Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister. Jenny, first in Scotland, right? Was there a lot of backlash in Scotland also?
No, not really. People really just saw it as akin to the whole SNP bad that we've had since prior to the first referendum. The right have always really rested their laurels on fear mongering when it comes to arguments. They don't really have like positive cases for whatever it is they want to implement. It's always, but if we don't do this, then we have to be scared of these people coming over, or we have to be scared of this happening, or you have to fear this. And it always boils down to fear mongering. Again, I was brought up a no voting Tory. When I changed my political perspective, the world suddenly seemed a much brighter place. Suddenly everything seemed far more positive, and there seemed to be actual hope there. There seemed to be progressive attitudes. There seemed to be, it was just far more positive. And I started seeing the right for what they really were, just a complete lack of arguments. So we were always getting, the SNP are just hateful, the SNP are corrupt, the SNP are detestable, etc. But we never took it personally as an electorate. We got used to it, and we got used to the fact that it was specifically the party they were talking about. So when Nicola Sturgeon came out and said, I detest the Tories and everything they stand for, it's like, well, yes, we all feel that way. We didn't feel like she was targeting Tory voters. We didn't feel like she was targeting, we knew just off the bat, it seemed just apparent to us that she was targeting the Tories, those in power, those that had been elected and were making the decisions, because the Tory voters don't have any power over the decisions the party makes. The party are doing this, and to their detriment as well, So we didn't see it as that. And then suddenly it seems so strange. Everyone's suddenly latching on to this one quote. Everyone's talking about it. It's just the story of the week, because how dare she, like, a quarter of Scots vote Tory, and she's looking down on all of us. It's like, are you fucking serious right now? There's really, because it's suddenly been turned on you for possibly what feels like the first time from someone with influence, the First Minister, you're suddenly taking it all very personally. We've never taken it personally. We understand you don't, like, you're not aligned with our politics. You're not aligned with our values, and you're not aligned with our way of thinking. And that's fine. We're allowed to have different views on this, It just seemed bewildered. It bewildered me. I couldn't understand how it was a story.
You see, I love what you're saying, because it kind of gives her the defense and the out, and I loved the fact she said it. But I think it was personal. 100% she knew what she was doing. And then she can say, and it's not the Tories, it's the policy. Bullshit. She detests Tories 100%, and they know it. And
so many of us have Tories in our family. I mean, again, my family are Tories. The whole lot of them, as far as I'm aware, are still Tories. I'm never going to, I never thought, she's talking about them. At no point did I feel she's talking about my dad, she's talking about my mum, she's talking about, at no point did I feel that. I believed she was talking about Truss and Truss's government. Yes. And a lot of us did.
Okay, yes, absolutely semantics. I agree. She's not like labeling like half the electorate. She meant that lot. but she meant she detested them personally. It wasn't just their policy. And I think what's happened since Johnson left, this particular, especially with the devastation that she's reached so quickly, and with the think tanks that she's influenced by, and the sort of lack of any care and total and utter ineptitude. I mean, you didn't think you could get worse than Johnson, and then you did. The gloves are off and the rhetoric is amped up. And so people are speaking more freely and saying things that you would have minded your language a bit more before. And this has been gradual. So when I used to go on telly and argue about Brexit, it was really difficult because you were arguing about something that hadn't happened yet. We were all arguing in hypotheticals, like this could happen, this will happen, that it will be amazing. No, it won't. Nothing was tangible. And so, if I went on and I was very anti-Johnson and very anti-Brexit, I mean, politely and moderately, but very passionate at the same time, I could get loads of abuse on social media. And then now that's kind of, if I go on and I say what I think about Johnson or I think about Brexit, it's a lot quieter. Right, because it's happened now. It's happened.
Well, Nicola's always been fairly tempered, and she's always been very diplomatic in the way that she's approached other parties and dealt with other parties.
But I feel like she's reached her wit's end.
Well, that's it. It's almost as though this government has been so bad, so corrupt, so detrimental, that in her doing that, it just shows everyone that she's been pushed. Yeah,
but they all have. I mean, to be fair to her, like, this is the thing. I totally get it, but Tories have been coming out and saying similar. You've had tweets with Tory MPs going, it was like a bit of old damp wood coming in that we couldn't light, and
which is tactful, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's been a lot stronger. There's been. You can see Penny Mordaunt sitting in the House of Commons just going just looking like she wants to, bloody put a bag over her head. She's so embarrassed.
It's like, God, please don't look at me because I'll have to smile at you and pretend that I agree.
Like the gloves are off, and it is fair enough now for people to be, the fact that I did go on telly and say I think the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Prime Minister should go to prison, and there was a few gasps, but it was sort of, it's not a crazy thing to say. So that's where we're at.
Not in the context.
So I feel like Sturgeon just hit her limits. And then what I quite like is when then she was being asked, "Oh, do you mean?" She was just like, "Yeah, I do mean it. I detest the policies. End of. Like, jog on. I've had enough."
I mean, she's not lying. She's got a lot of support behind her for that comment.
So a Tory who I really respect and sort of get on with very well is Ian Dale. He's a very good broadcaster. We have really different politics, but I respect him enormously, and I know him personally and stuff. He once had a go at me because I said in the green room, that I couldn't date a Tory because I'm single. And he was like going, "Why not? That's so narrow-minded." And I was like, "Well, is it?" I said, "Look, I can have friends who are sort of moderate conservatives, not that I really do, but I can, like him. But no, I don't want my pillow talk to be sort of rowing about bloody Brexit. Like, I don't. Professional life.
That's an interesting segue. So, what would put you off dating a Tory? So, maybe I'll come back to Jemma in a moment. Jenny, would you date a Tory?
Just purely because of the negativity, because I know the state of mind and where they come from, having experienced that for the majority of my life. I don't think I could handle the negativity, because whenever I've got into conversation with Tories, it's always come down to fear-mongering every single time at every opportunity. It's almost as if they have nothing else in the rhetoric.
Is the scaremongering similar in Scotland as it is in England? So, for example, in England, it's generally immigration, Brexit maybe to a certain extent. In Scotland, is it similar, or is it just a fear of independence?
Yeah. I mean, I was brought up believing that Scotland would become a third world country, a developing nation. It would revert to that status should we deign abscond from the British Union. And it was doing my research and finding out about the country that made me realise that actually we've got far more going for us in a lot of small countries with similar populations, that we could be like Finland or Iceland or Ireland if we wanted to be. That there's absolutely nothing to stop us. That the only reason that people might vote against that opportunity seems to be either an emotional tie to the union, I've got family in England. I've got family and we've always got on together, and why would we want anything else? The obverse argument to that is, why should things change? Why would we not be friends if we were to gain self-determination?
Is it not often an economic argument that people worry that Scotland wouldn't,
Do you know, you don't hear a lot of that, and I haven't heard a lot of that from people that I've spoken to and personally know who are pro-union. It tends to be an emotional angle that they come from. But then a lot of people, I've heard that said about the pro self-determination side, that they're coming at it from an emotional rather than an economical angle. But then you just ask them to look at any other small nation, again, with the same kind of population, compare it to Scotland, with Scotland's assets, Scotland's resources, Scotland's population and landmass, and ask them, why not? Why not Scotland? Why could we not do it? What's stopping us from being able to stand on our own 2 feet? And then we're in the Supreme Court at the moment, and we seem to be in the Supreme Court based on a fear from England that there's somehow going to be some kind of security issue for England should Scotland leave. Why would that be the case? Why would Scotland leave in the Union? But then they can have Trident. By all means, you take your subs, you take your nukes, put them in the Thames. You enjoy that shit. You enjoy having yourself as a target. Because I can tell you, I moved to Faslane Peace Camp when I was 16. I lived there for about 9 months protesting against the nuclear. And that was as a Tory. I went and campaigned against the nuclear armaments in Scotland. We don't enjoy being a target. If there were ever to be that kind of a war, where are they going to aim for first? They're going to aim for the stores of nukes. They're going to aim for the naval bases that deal with these things, which is going to be Faslane, which is going to affect Glasgow and the wider area. Do you know what I mean? That's
the main reason not dating a Tory is because of the because negativity. Of the negativity. Jemma, you sort of pointed out something similar. No.
Well, listen, 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have cared, right? I'm going to be honest about that. Just, unless someone had sort of terrible values, whatever, but I really wouldn't have cared where they put their cross if I was really into them. But things have changed. And we've all probably generally become more I'm now complete feverish political animal. And I feel so passionately that since, Johnson, I just couldn't bear. I just couldn't bear him from the day dot. And I feel like with him,
my dad was a fan of him. My dad really enjoyed that he got into Parliament.
Millions of people were, and I understand that he had the Trump, Bolsonaro, the kind of charm, the oration, the thing that people thought he's going to sort us out. He speaks for us. God knows why. But I kind of had it when he was mayor. I thought he was quite funny. I thought it was quite harmless. And I remember my stepmom, she's very canny, she's Scottish actually, and she was like, he's dangerous. He's the most dangerous of all. And as soon as I got that, it was very terrible. And watching Brexit be done, and when you care so much about something, you can't date someone and them disagree entirely. It would just be a shit show. It became life. It spilled into my life, if you like, that I wouldn't want to be on the sofa watching something with someone going, oh, he's so funny. I would just want to I couldn't bear it would just anger me. There's enough things to fall out over without that being. So basically it came down to values, but I'm going to mitigate that with since Johnson, not old school. And there's, like I say, there's lots of very nice, moderate Tory voting people. Of course there are. I'm not that hateful, but do I want to date somebody who thinks Jacob Rees-Mogg is okay? Do I want to, could I go out for dinner with someone that tried to say, oh, give Liz Truss a chance? I'm just going to think you bewilder me. We're not going to get on. We're not going to be singing from the same hymn sheet. You need to have that. And also people voting against free school dinners. I mean, this stuff is basic. What they've done to the NHS, austerity, I fundamentally think was so hostile. Immigration, like Rwanda, if I was dating someone and they thought Rwanda was a good idea, they're not going to be my man. Sorry.
No. Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. Like the idea that somebody would say, we need to make sure the children go to school hungry, and it's the
parents' fault. It's the parents' fault. You need to educate the parents because they just give them McDonald's. Oh, shut up.
Yeah.
You see so many stories that get you so emotional now with regards how people are having to live, what they're having to
I
do to
know.
get by. The fact that there was a kid would bring in his lunchbox, his empty lunchbox, and pretend like he was
because
eating
I
out of
get
it,
weepy.
so that other children didn't realize the position that his family were in. And you just think, they're hearing this. They're hearing this stories.
Yeah.
They're getting MPs from the opposition mentioning these stories in Parliament. They're not avoiding these stories, and yet they're pursuing the policies that create this situation.
Yeah, and then they'll give a tax break that could pay for it. Like, where? So fundamentally, I'm a socialist. But I also believe really strongly that socialism and capitalism can live beautifully together, and has done in the Britain that I loved and have grown up in, have been so lucky to have. Sure. I.e., it encourages business, but you've got the NHS, the biggest socialist endeavor that they have screwed. And we might not have that in the future. Socialism is beautiful when it works properly, and everything is tipped too far. And I was arguing with a Conservative the other day, and he was going, but the Conservatives, they'd put a wealth tax, and I was like, good. And he was going, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. And I said, it's so selfish. Yeah. You're so, because he's like owns loads of houses, this person. And he was like, yeah, well, if you earned more, and I said, no, you don't understand. There is actually a movement called patriotic millionaires who want to pay more tax. Like,
you get them in
this
Scotland
idea that you're privileged or you earn a lot, but you don't give a shit about society, or you don't care about people who've got less than you. Whereas I believe if you live in a fair society, it's better for you anyway, because you've got less crime, less misery. And if you've got the slightest bit of empathy, like, how much money do you need?
Well, not just that. I mean, if the country that you've been born and brought up in has set you up to be in such a position that you're able to make so much money, why would you not want to give back and make it so that other people... You get it a lot in Scotland. You hear a lot, when these debates come up, you get a lot of richer Scottish folk coming out on social media going, I'm quite happy paying higher tax, thank you very much. Yeah. You know, I mean, I want to give back to the country. I want to make sure that children are eating. I want to make sure that other people have the same opportunities as I had. Whereas in the Tories, you have frontbenchers who are the children of immigrant parents who don't want other people to have that opportunity. They don't want immigration. They don't want the chance for other people to be able to come over and seek that same refuge here and to be able to flourish in Britain. They don't want that for other people,
But what's kind of so, I don't know what the right word is satisfying, despairing, I don't know, is that they have proved that they are fundamentally not the party of business or fiscal responsibility.
No. They've absolutely
screwed the economy. The debt levels are off the scale. There was more debt before COVID than there was when they took over from Labour after a global crash. All these tropes that fly around are just bullshit. Yep. The NHS, the levels of just they've screwed it, and business they've hampered completely. With Brexit.
Jemma, I just wanted to ask you about when it comes to Brexit, because I think both of us are on the same wavelength. When do you think we'll get to a stage when the Tories actually admit that Brexit was a mistake?
Oh, I don't know.
Because I maybe it's very far in the future.
It's like, obviously I get very frustrated with elements of Labour, but I think I've come round to understanding why they're so timid about it and so cautious about it. I met Emily Thornberry actually at something, and I was sort of probably being a real pain in the ass, questioning her, like, why don't you just come out and say it's a fuck of shit? Like, because if you look at, various polls, it shows that it's swung around to people thinking, and she was like, not yet. It is still such a febrile issue. Play the long game. And she kind of brought me around to her way of thinking. And you have to remember that they do so much research into these things. They do so much careful, measured looking at it. They know. Most people know, but there's still a lot of emotion around it and clinging on and all that bullshit. So we'll get there. But
there was an interesting debate, or it was a caller to James O'Brien some months back, where this guy told, he presented this theory. It's like the sale. So Boris Johnson sold you something. Whether you like it or not, that's okay. But what Keir Starmer has to avoid doing is taking that away. And there was this idea that Johnson, whether people believe it or not, but Johnson delivered Brexit, he got Brexit done. And you don't want to be seen as taking that away. Whether it's good or bad, people want to move on. They don't want it brought back. They don't want it taken away, in a sense. So that's why maybe... we have Alex back.
Better late than never.
Oh, and he's moving on camera. Oh my word.
Yeah. Do not. Oh wow. Just yeah. That's a story for another day. How is everyone?
Good, thank you.
So good.
Good to have you back.
Have you been able to listen into the conversation?
Oh, I have, and I've been yelling at the screen, but thing
Max, stop saying that.
Oh my word. That's been an interesting 5 minutes, and I'll edit most of this out. Or maybe I'll put some of this into the outtakes. But yeah, well, quite simply, no one wants Boris back. Liz Truss has got about as much ability as a dead donkey. And that's nothing against donkeys. And the whole thing looks like a complete mess. And interestingly, Laura Kuenssberg's browbeating, it just said quite a lot about her. She hasn't got the ability to be a decent PM. She didn't even follow the basics of President Roosevelt, who was like, let's shut the banks for 7 days, reset everything. I'll get on TV and the radio and calm everyone down and try and make sure that, everything looks stable. And she just scuffed a lot. Have I jumped in a little bit behind by saying all that, or is that?
No, we were about there.
Yeah, we were about there. We got on to why we wouldn't date a Tory. We got on to...
Alex, perfect. That's a perfect... Just to jump back, Alex, would you date a Tory?
God.
And why not?
Why not? I guess it's always like it's been quite... I know of couples who are juxtaposed in that position, so Tory and something else. I don't think I could, just because I know that the Tory party it's traitorous to the UK. It literally sold us out to the Russians. It doesn't care about standards. It doesn't care about the ramifications of Brexit. And so if you're voting for that, I'm just like, I don't get how you can see that's a viable option. I can get how you might have old Tories, the old version, sort of more classical. These guys are quite
moderate.
Classical. Yeah, sort of and I can have conversations with them. My dad is a staunch Tory. I can have conversations with him, and we get on very well. When it comes up with these guys, he agrees they're useless. So I guess it sort of depends on that level. But if you voted Tory now, or you voted in the last few years for Tory, I think ideologically, we're not going to get on.
Yeah, I was just I couldn't deal with having dinner with someone who's going, I just think we need to give Truss a chance. I'd be like, what?
Yeah,
I'd be so thoroughly bewildered. Or I was saying Rwanda and all these sort of very key sort of policies that are so foul that they're not in accordance with my values or my outlook. So I wouldn't. Yeah.
They're so out there on the far neoliberal, far right viewpoint. I can't, I couldn't imagine voting for anyone that is that extreme.
Yeah.
Or plus I've already got a partner, so that sort of...
that would be another story. It's gone off with a Tory.
Well, just after I started seeing my husband, we went over to my parents, my dad, so I could introduce him. And my dad at that point he'd had surgery. My dad's self-employed, but he'd had surgery, which meant that he had to take some time off of work. And he's complaining about how hard it is to obtain the welfare to tide him over. And I'm like, you voted in the Tories that have made it difficult for you to obtain the welfare that you need at the moment to tide you over. And he immediately shut down the conversation by saying, we're not talking politics. It's like, you started the conversation by talking about how hard it is to get welfare.
But for example...
that is politics, you know?
Something I don't understand is, and I've seen it in the past, for example, somebody who runs a food bank, and they would vote for the Conservative Party. I don't know how...
Would they? Really?
But I've seen examples, yes. No, I don't know how common they are, but I've seen a few examples.
It can't be that common. Surely it can't be that common. Those kind of people have empathy, and it can't be that common.
I'm like, bring back Gordon Brown. I've got a little soft spot for him at the moment.
Another Scot you can keep.
No, he, just in terms of sorting out the economy, he was standing there the other day and he was like, well, I'll do this. And you say, oh my God, sense. Please, just on an economic front, bring him back just for a day to sort everything out.
What did he say he would do, Jemma? Because I've missed that, unfortunately.
Oh, I can't remember the detail, but it was, he put out a whole thread. Basically.
Bill Cruikshank responded to him saying, do you know what? You're putting out this whole thread of why what's going on at the moment is terrible and how detrimental it is to people. You literally kept us tied to the union through the first referendum. You've meant that we're in bed with this Gump still. It's your fault, you know.
It is a bit of cognitive dissonance on his side.
A little bit.
The other thing, though, is that interestingly, there's lots of economists who I sort of follow, and they are a bit like, there's not a lot anyone can do. It's just a shit show. It's like not very reversible. And then someone I know who works in finance was just going, well, basically, just imagine there was a full bath of water, and then you take the plug out on the day that they announce their budget, and the water's just flooding out. That's the economy. And the sooner someone sticks the plug back in, the better. But she's fucked it, basically.
It's amazing you're saying that, because I'm actually in Archimedes' hometown. He was famous for the bath.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Going Eureka.
Yeah.
Hopefully that won't happen with any of the Tories in the bath. I really would like to avoid seeing any of that.
Yeah.
And also the
fact that the IMF got involved, and people seem to be going, oh yeah, the international. It's like they never have with any country in the G7 had to go like financial police.
1976 they bailed out Britain, the IMF.
Okay.
In 1976 they bailed out Britain because Britain was in real dire straits. Yeah, I actually found that out the other day. But I posted on Twitter, I think Max saw that, just is this something that they're going to have to do again? Are they going to have to step in like they did in 76 and bail us out again? Because with the borrowing that Tories are
raise
doing...
the funds. Like, I would get rid of the 12.5. Is it 12.5 grand now? You get it tax free.
Oh, I don't know.
So after 50, if you earn 50k or more, I'd get rid of that. There you go. That's instant money into the kitty. That pays it off, and I doubt anyone who earning over 50 would care.
I mean, the Tories don't enjoy taxing people, though, do they? They like to not tax people in the idea that they'll be voted in again for some reason.
Except it's the highest tax burden since the war. So, like, it's all, none of it makes any sense.
These rich people are happy to pay the higher levels of tax. They are happy to give back to the society that they grew up in, and that help bolster them, you know.
Can I say that Nicola Sturgeon played a blinder the other week where she was under pressure from... So what happened was with the tax cuts. So Kwasi Kwarteng introduced, we're going to get rid of the top rate of tax, 45%, 45p in the pound. And I remember Scottish Tories were putting pressure on Nicola Sturgeon. You have to follow suit.
Douglas Ross, yeah.
But also even the BBC were saying, it looks bad for Nicola Sturgeon. And she stuck to her guns, and then... Of course. But there wasn't a follow-up saying, you were right. No.
I mean, there has been from other commentators on social media and that saying, I mean, should have been stupid to have done so, because she would have had to have U-turned along with the rest of them.
Yeah. But there was this idea that, if she doesn't U-turn, if she doesn't follow through, you'd have this exodus of millionaires. But as we pointed out, a lot of
we're set on moving down to England if Sturgeon doesn't follow suit. It's like, enjoy yourself. Don't let the door hit you on your way out. You enjoy that, you know.
At the end of the day, it doesn't bring in a lot of money, because it was more a political decision. It's like throwing something to these people, saying, "Look, we're on your side," because most of the people who are the richest in society don't make their money through PAYE. They make it through investments or from shares or whatever.
And also, this whole thing is so exhausting, isn't it? Because what you've had is a decade or so of no investment in skills, in people, in infrastructure. I'm not an economist, but I'm not stupid. Like, if you want growth, you've got to invest in the levels of society that have just been absolutely shafted and have got nothing. It doesn't make any sense at all. You know, they every graph shows that they are shit at running the economy.
Sleeves and getting ready for this.
I think their lack of wanting to spend money is what's driving the privatisation efforts as well. They feel like if they sell off what they need to spend public funds on, the NHS, etc., then these private companies can put whatever money they feel they need to. But at that point, everything goes downhill, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. You privatise a railway, it never gets upgraded, the trains fall to shit, the lines go to shit.
Look at the water.
Exactly. Privatisation only leads to a detriment in standards, because the companies don't want to spend money. What the Tories don't understand is they act solely as if it's their money they're spending. It's not. It's public funds that are supposed to be spent on the public good, on the public infrastructure, on public services, on the NHS. And they don't want to spend it for that. They want to spend it on their friends. They want to spend it on themselves. They want to spend it on their investments because they feel like suddenly they're in power, so it's their money, it's ours. And it's just
Actually,
this
Jenny,
selfishness that runs right through them.
Actually, Jenny, if you notice what they say is when they're spending money for infrastructure, whatever they say, it's government money. When they're spending money for welfare, it's taxpayer money. So there's always this narrative of, if it's for something bad, it's taxpayer money. We need to be fiscally conservative, responsible and conservative. But if it's for infrastructure, we're spending government.
We need to
money.
responsibly let disabled people die. We need to responsibly make children not have their dinner. The opposite of responsible. They're just foul.
So upsetting. All this news at the moment is just so upsetting. Like, there's just too much negative. Things will get better because
revolution.
I just can't understand how it could possibly get very much worse.
We said that with Johnson.
I know, but we have to reach some kind of plateau at some point, surely, so that we can start a rise back up again. Surely.
Alex, do you have something positive?
Well, there are solutions. They're not difficult, like, if they know what they're doing. But because they're so ideologically skewed, and they've obviously had bad info, which seems to be coming from these think tanks that won't announce where they're getting their money from, it means that actually they're not going to fix it. So you mentioned earlier about education and investing in education. Do you know how many kids, statistics that you showed, how many kids you need in a classroom to actually get a beneficial education? Does anyone know?
No.
Have a guess?
What you mean, like small class size?
It must be about 16. It must be about 16, 18.
I was going to say 20 maybe.
Not bad, actually. It's 19. 19 is the correct answer. That's sort of like the sort of golden point, which is what you get in Finland, which is part of the reason why Finland's education system is top notch. Do you know what ours is in primary schools?
Well, it's like 30 odd, isn't it? They at least 30 in every class. Yeah, it's
about
massive.
36, yeah.
So you've already knackered them at primary because it's 20. The average is 27, so it can be 30, which we ban. The only exception being science. By law, you're only allowed to have, I think, 20 max in a science. Really? So you're going, right, well, if you haven't even sorted out the education level at the basic level, and you can't even feed them, we've got reports coming out in the news that they're not feeding kids, and kids can't get food to the point where they're stealing from the school cafeteria. You're going, right. So you're not investing in the one thing that we have that you could invest in and grow,
But they're also, and then furthermore, like, okay, we need to attract talent to the City of London, so we're going to remove caps on bonuses for bankers. How are you going to attract teachers and nurses and doctors? Because that's what we're really short of, you idiots. And can we have a pay rise? No. Oh, can nurses have free parking? No. What are you doing to attract them when they're hemorrhaging staff? And personally, I think we've got plenty of bankers. Don't worry about them. They clearly don't know what they're doing anyway. It's nurses and good teachers, please. Good teachers teaching our kids.
Build a good economy. Good teachers build a good economy.
Exactly.
5%, 5 to 10% is what we're recruiting this year, according to the head of the NEU, for teachers in maths, physics, and general sciences. So if you're going to go for this engineering, products producing, send it abroad thing, do that. But the other problem is the city. I've got friends of mine who got degrees in maths and physics. They were in their third or second year of uni, and they were getting approached by members of the city and saying, come work for us. We'll pay you $100,000 a year starting salary. And we need you to sort of jerry rig our tax system so the tax office doesn't know how to get the money. Like, hide it away and squirrel it. The other thing is Brexit. It's shrunk the economy. Go and listen to Adam Posson, the guy who used to work inside the Bank of England, American, and he knows his stuff, and he predicted all this, and it's all come true so far. But Brexit's shrunk the economy, and this is why they're so crazy about foreign investment. When the key ingredients for growing an economy is foreign investment, which is why they try to shrink the tax. But of course, they can't afford to shrink the tax because they're in a recession, which then says to me, they don't know what they're doing. And not only do they not know what they're doing, they don't have the confidence to be able to actually go, hey, look, we can do this. And you go, I go back to President Roosevelt. He set up a perfect framework of how you sell. when you have a recession. You go out on TV and you sell your policy. Liz Truss can't do that. I watched the panel that we recommended the other day, the panel called the Behaviour Panel.
Yeah.
And they turned around and said, she's got no confidence and she's definitely doing cuts. They would make a bet based on her body language interpretation. She's got no confidence in her ability. Laura Kunsberg, yeah. Thunderbirds.
She's doing the Munster.
Yeah, and then you add in the sort of evil bit. I'm sorry, but you add in, so if someone said to them, oh, class sizes are really big, why haven't you done that? They would blame it on immigration, because that's what they do. That's their playbook. Everything is the fault of immigrants, which is utter bullshit anyway. And then, of course, now they're going to have to do trade deals with India and so on. But the quid pro quo will be immigration to sort out our labour shortages. The whole thing, none of it makes any sense whatsoever. Oh, except that Suella Braverman has actually pissed off India by being rude about Indians. So they can't even get that right. Apparently Modi is insulted because she said they're the most likely to overstay, and they're furious. She's just like that. They're just awful. Yeah, they're an absolute awful mixture of utterly incompetent, crazed ideologues and inept. I mean, it's so upsetting that we're having to.
And now the Home Secretary has been sidelined, but she's responsible for visas and for security and for all of these things. So I mean, now you have basically Liz Truss taking over as Home Secretary.
Scotland was always in need of an immigration in order to bolster its workforce. We welcome immigration, like we always have. We require immigration in order to keep our services running as they should.
But that's not devolved power.
No, but exactly. Even before Brexit, Tory policies on immigration were harmful to Scotland. Post-Brexit, so much worse.
Yeah,
so
I was on a
worse.
very sort of right-wing station the other day, Talk TV, and they were going, I was sort of sticking up for immigration, and they were going, but there's 2 million unemployed people here, and I was like, yeah, a lot of them are disabled. What do you want to do? Do you want to like drag them out of their chairs and make them like kill pigs? And they were like, well, they can't all be disabled.
I mean, they're talking about getting old age pensioners. They're talking about getting old age pensioners out picking berries and fruit, aren't they? Like, just to justify their pensions that they've paid into their entire lives.
Yeah, they're like, why aren't the rest of them working? And I was like, well, I don't have data on every single person, but one would say that a lot of them have mental health issues. Well. And I was like, but also you can't suddenly necessarily, unless you train them up and invest in them, give them the skills to be able to go and slaughter a pig.
But also there's a big issue as well as the location. So, for example, a lot of the farms are far away from cities. So either people commute every day, or which is a cost, which is not going to be covered because you're going to be paying people either minimum wage or less. It's not feasible. So that's why in the past you had, and I've seen it here, maybe Alex, you've seen it in Sicily as well. You have a lot of people living on site. Yeah. Not in very good conditions, I have to admit, I have to add, but you have people living on site for a number of months, and then they would return back to their country after that.
And try relocating now in this climate.
Yeah.
So you're literally relying and hoping, if you're unemployed, that the jobs that are nearest you and jobs you can actually get to are going to suit your skill set. What if they don't?
But they know what, in a way, they've sorted it, haven't they? Because Brexit was about immigration, because everybody wants to come here because it's such an attractive country. And what she's done now, she's made it a shit country. So now less people want to come. So yeah, job done. Well done, everybody.
They're just idiots.
But then there's that weird thing that we've got 1 million job vacancies. And so you're like, right, so you don't want more people and you're telling us you're going to create more jobs. Well, what the hell is the point in creating more jobs if we can't even fill the ones that we have here? That doesn't make any sense what they're saying.
Exactly. There's so many levels of idiocy, so many facets of stupidity when it comes to the Tories that it baffles anyone to take a look at. It's almost, I don't know. It gives me a headache just watching these political shows these days. Just for the last week, it's just been migraine and just
try being on them.
Oh no, I believe it. I don't know how to do it. I mean,
you can't say that.
I know it, but you know what I mean.
That's in the outtakes.
And Jemma, I have to tell you, the very fact that you can even sit in the same room as Carol Malone, I'm sorry. I don't know what you do it.
She is an interesting conundrum.
I bet she is.
Because the thing is, okay, every single thing that she says, I'm like,
oh.
But, you know, you sit in the makeup room, she's going, oh, have you been to TK Maxx recently? Oh, they've got some lovely duvets. Anyway, and you just chat, and she's, you know, the thing is, there's a lot of people as well, I will say, that absolutely love her. They're like, she speaks for me. She's Northern. She's like Geordie. She gets it. She's this. She's that.
I always ask this, and I've asked other people this question as well. Do you think it's for show?
No. There are people who are, and I'm going to stick up for on that. She genuinely is one of the ones that does her prep.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess she's doing her prep from very different sites than I am, because her sources will probably be more the Express and whatever. No, she believes it all. And it's a really tough one because, you know, she's all right, like off air. She's nice. She's sort of,
you know what,
quite funny.
I put on your episode, just the recent one about the protests in London, just to have a wee look at what it was you're saying. And my husband was in the kitchen and he heard Carol's voice. He goes, is that fucking woman again? And he comes around, looks at TV, and he goes, fucking can't stand her, because we see her on the Sky newspapers, and it's just like, she's just hateful. That's how she comes across to us.
Yeah, I know. Listen, if I was just watching her on telly, I'd probably feel the same. But it is one of those weird conundrums where I bet if you were at a drinks party or something and you met her, she's all right. Like, you know, if you're not standing there talking about immigration, you're just having a chat. She's
or protesting, apparently.
Yeah, and so I would be, because I'm not a fake person. Like there are a few people that I've come across where I'm sitting very frostily and we just nap. But she's not one of them, even though her views are like so abhorrent. We've had such massive rows on TV. But I'm saying what I think, she's saying what she thinks. And another misnomer is you don't get told what to say on these shows. You're there to say whatever you want to say.
Course.
Can I then ask, if you get the opportunity, because you're able to be in that world, is there any chance you can ask how many nice stories that they've reported on with immigrants? Like, how many migrants have we had come over becoming doctors? In 2001, Kent crime rate went down and immigration had gone up. You're statistically less likely to commit crime if you're an immigrant, because of course there's always that chance of getting deported. And this can be seen in stats across the states. And that's the thing that always gets me. It's like, okay, you're going to have these negative stories. Where's that level of balance?
Well, and I mean, I tried to provide balance.
Yes,
and,
you do.
My compadres, Marina and, you know, Femi, and there were all loads of us. This is the thing. People get very enraged because they're hearing the side that they fundamentally disagree with, but there is always usually someone there trying to. And the other thing I'll say, I mean, that's a great stat you've just given me, to the point where I'm going to put it in my notes about, was it 2001? Give me some stats on immigration. But the point is, the trouble is often what you're there is to talk about the papers, and it's the papers that are so rank. So I'm given a headline that is like, ugh, and that's what you're talking about. So if that headline said in 2001, well, great, that would be the story. So a lot of the problem is those rags, you know, that are.
But they don't. The frustration is that they don't want to print that. Where's that story about, hey, look at this guy or lady, and they've turned up in the UK and they've built this life and business and da 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 da.
I want to say so. I think we need to approach it from a different angle, instead of taking, because if you say, what about this doctor who saved lives and he came from another country, many people on the right will say, well, that's the exception. I'd approach it from a different angle. I would say, have you ever experienced negativity towards you? It can be about anything, maybe about your weight or about your height or about your personality or about your skin color or whatever. But have you ever experienced that? And most people have experienced something. And then I would say, now imagine that to somebody who's just come to move to Britain to try and build, to rebuild their lives. How do you think they feel?
The term that really gets me is illegal immigration. And they're not illegal, they're not illegal until they get here and they're denied residency. And then if they stay on, then sure, that's illegal for them to be here after being denied residency. But them just coming over and seeking asylum, there's nothing illegal about that. They're not illegal immigrants doing that.
Yeah, but I've said that.
Perfectly
You
legal.
can say that. I've heard people say that to the blue in their face. You've got Yasmin Alibi Brown, Shola, there's all these people who are on that side. You got to know your audience a bit as well. And that's important on these things. And you have to also accept that there are pockets of the North that have had no investment. And if and it's difficult for me because I get called champagne socialist or whatever because I've got my posh voice or whatever. It was all bullshit. But, you know, but the point is, I have a lot of, especially men, like to really challenge me. What do you know? You know, and I got a lorry driver on my Instagram the other day. In the end, I had to block him because he was being so aggressive. I was trying to like have rational debate because he wanted to at first, but he was saying, you know, where I live, all the Albanians were coming and taking my job as a lorry driver. And you got to be careful not to reduce people's experiences as well. And okay, I could argue, yeah, but your area is like that because of Tory policy, because of austerity, but you're linking it to that because you've been doing it. But then again, you know, if someone's got a valid life experience, but then he was like, you know, my wages have gone up by £5 an hour since Brexit, so I'd love it. And I was thinking, you know, what about the queues? How are they? How are they? I had to be careful. And yeah, I just thought he actually was getting really, the trouble is there's people like him who maybe now going, oh, it was my hope that, you know, Brexit gave me hope, because I was being told by David Cameron, that twat, not to vote for it. And actually my lot were like, no, actually this is going to be change. And I was promised it was going to be bloody great. And now they're seeing, oh, it isn't. And it's hard. They've got to come to terms with that.
It's interesting because you could definitely mention that in different sectors. But then you go, all these policies could have been run. Like, if you wanted to limit immigration into the UK through Europe, you could have done that. Belgium were doing it. Nigel Farage didn't even know that.
I know,
which was
I know.
unreal. It's one of those things where you look at what they're saying, you're going, right, building and construction, I could see there were problems. I was aware of it. I was looking around houses and finding out when I was in East London, finding that like apparently they had to turf out 30 men who had come over from wherever to work and had just shunted themselves into one building. You're sort of like, well, isn't that the landlord's fault for shunting 30 people into a 2-bed house? Shouldn't that be monitored? And if that was monitored, then maybe that wouldn't have happened. But you're also going, maybe the landlord wanted that to happen because he could charge them a bit extra for knowing that there were 30 men in there, had them hostage. Yeah. I think it's more complicated than just saying, oh, bring down migration. And then there was also, it's interesting with the truck workers. Yeah, they probably have made more money because, you know. Yeah.
So he's like, it's pretty good for me.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.